Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. It's 5 o'clock. My name is Bill Baker, and I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. I'm the vice chair. Our chair is absent at the moment, Phil Pocock. First of all, I want to introduce the committee who is here. Okay, so to my far left is Dan Sauvé. Okay, Doreen Lester, Corinne, who is our senior planner. Then we have Marcia next to me, and Ian Rawlings is our senior planner, and we have a guest, a heritage planner. Thank you very much. Good. Okay. Now, before we get started, then I would like to just do a little bit of housekeeping here, so that all your addresses and that should be through the chair. Okay, and then we'll address the issues that are on the agenda only. No outbursts from any personality issues. And then when you do need to speak, when it's come to you, we'll ask you to go to the podium, turn it on, because this is being live streamed on YouTube. Okay, so make sure your hair is combed. Just kidding. Okay, now if I'd like to have the land acknowledgement, and if our senior planner could read that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wendat peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original people of Turtle Island who have been living and working on the land from time immemorial.
And Mr. Phil Pocock has joined us now. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask, is there any conflict of interest? Seeing none? Okay. First of all, I would like to get a motion to adopt the agenda that's published. Good. Doreen and Phil. Thank you. And then I'd like to get a motion to adopt the minutes of the May 22nd, 24 meeting. Again, okay. Dan and Doreen. Thank you. All right. I think that's enough of the initial housekeeping. So our first agenda is B1224 Ontario Inc. Jack Reimer, 7177 Talbot Street. And I will then turn that over to the planner. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. All right, so our first application tonight is B1224 for the property 7177 Talbot Street North, which is located on the northern side of Talbot Street North, west of Victoria Avenue. The subject property is designated Essex Town Center in the Town of Essex Official Plan and is zoned Commercial District 2.2 in the Town of Essex zoning bylaw. The subject property currently contains one building, which is being used as a retail store, otherwise known as Blimey's. The applicants are proposing to sever a 649 square meter parcel from the existing 981 square meter commercial lot. The retained commercial lot is proposed to have an area of 332 square meters and will contain the existing retail store. This subject property was once considered 4 separately conveyable lots that have since merged under common ownership. Therefore, the applicant is proposing to a consent for the creation of only one commercial lot. Next slide, please. So here we have the provided site plan, which also gives measurements and details the past lots that have since merged. Next slide, please. All right, here we have an image of the subject property. You can see Blimey's on the right, which is that retail store I was talking about. And then you can also see that vacant land that is manicured to the left that would be used for a future building envelope. However, we do not have any development plans at this time. So right now we're only assessing the vacant lot. Next slide, please. Here we just have another angle of that vacant lot. It is on a bit of an angle as it does abut the greenway. Next slide, please. And here we have an image of the property to the rear. There is a mural on the back of the Blimey's building. However, that would remain untouched at this time with this type of development. Next slide, please. And here we just have an image of the retained lands and a closer up image of where that lot line separating the two would be, which is right on, realistically on top of that wall that's constructed for the Blimies. Next slide, please. So here we have the analysis of the respective policies. Now the provincial policy statement and the County of Essex official plan are satisfied as the development is located within a settlement area, encourages compact development, supports employment opportunities, and utilizes full municipal services. This future development will require site plan control under our official plan, which will deal with aspects such as parking, site access, orderly development, and so on. No proposed development is available at this time, and the severed and retained lots both abide by all zoning regulations. Next slide, please. We have received one comment from the Essex Region Conservation Authority detailing no objections, and we have not received any other comments at this time, either internally or from external departments or from the public. Next slide, please. Here, we have a list of our standard conditions we would apply, plus the payment of parkland dedication fee in accordance with our parkland dedication bylaw. And as usual, the applicants have 2 years to fulfill all conditions. Next slide, please. Now, lastly, just want to remind the committee of the decisions they can make today. First is to approve with or without the conditions, but they must be deemed reasonable. The next is to defer based on the need for additional information, or to deny the application. However, if you do so, you will have to state the reasoning. And lastly, the planning department is recommending approval for this application with the detailed conditions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Now we're going to hear from the representative of the applicant, Mr. Jack Reimer. I think you'd like to speak.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. This is Jack Ramirez from Miller Canfield Law Firm. I represent the numbered company 997025 Ontario Inc. that owns the property. Also in attendance is the principal of that company, Mr. Michael Elichkar, available to answer questions as well. I'd like to start by thanking Ms. Chason for all of her help on pre-consultation and Mr. Rawlings for his thorough analysis. I basically have nothing to add and only would say to the committee that we adopt the recommendations of administration and urge you to grant the application. But myself and Mr. Elichkar are available to answer any questions.
Mr. Reimer, I'm going to go to the committee now and ask if there's any questions with relative to the applications. Hearing none, is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak for or against this application? Good. I'm going to ask for a motion. Doreen? Good. Do I have a seconder with that? Phil? Thank you. All in favor? That was a breeze. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay, now we are going to hear our second application and a third application together with B1324, Hugh and Margaret Backrell, 10-8-39 10th concession for a consent application, and A1124, again, the same principal party, for a application for minor variance. And I will turn this over to the planner now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Our next application tonight is B1324 and A1124 for the subject property 10-8-39 10th Concession Road. The subject property is designated agriculture in the Town of Essex official plan and is split zoned agriculture 1.1 and natural environment district 1.1 within the Town of Essex zoning bylaw. The subject property has frontage along 10th Concession Road and Fair Side Road. The subject property currently contains one single detached dwelling, detached garage, 2 accessory structures associated with the existing farming operation, and a manually constructed irrigation pond. A significant portion of the property is located within the floodplain development control area because of the Canard River, and is therefore subject to the Essex Region Conservation Authority's limit of regulated territory. The property also contains a significant valley land features, provincially significant wetland, potential habitat of species at risk or endangered species. Portions of the property are identified in the official plan and zoning bylaw as natural heritage overlay and natural environment. The applicant is requesting to sever a 20-hectare parcel from the existing 40-hectare agricultural lot. for the purposes of a farm split to reestablish the original layout of the farm parcels that were once merged under title. The retained agricultural lot is proposed to have an area of roughly 21 hectares. Next slide, please. So here we have the site plan that the applicants provided. You can, north is actually to our left here when looking at the image, but you can see the River Cunard that cuts through the retained lands at the top of the screen. And then the agricultural property would be, or agricultural uses would be on the bottom half. Next slide, please. So here, I just wanted to include two images from our zoning bylaw. The image on the left details the natural heritage overlay, which details most of the property to the east, being under that natural heritage overlay. And then the image to the right is showing that natural environmental district 1.1 being the green. And then where there's no color is actually where it's zoned agricultural 1.1. All right, next slide, please. So here we have the subject property. Now the subject property is too large to get one single picture of, but this is the existing house and detached garage. Next slide, please. Here we have that man-made irrigation pond. Next slide. And then here we have that significant valley land. Next slide as well. And then here we also have a bit of that agricultural operation that's going to be located in the severed land. Next slide, please. And here we have the consideration of the respective policies. Now, under the provincial policy statement, we identified that lot creation is only permitted for agricultural uses. However, this severance will not result in the change of use for either the retained or severed land. With it, the natural heritage and agricultural uses will be protected for the long term following this severance. There'd be no reduction in the size of agricultural operations as it will be contained entirely to the severed lot. Conservation easement will be utilized to ensure maximum protection of the natural heritage features over both the retained and severed lots where appropriate. Restrictive covenant will be placed over the severed lands to protect the construction of any new dwellings, meaning there will be no increase in density on this land, aside from the opportunity to have an ADU for the retained land, which still stands today. This proposed severance does require relief from the zoning bylaw as it does not meet the minimum farm lot size of 100 acres or 40 hectares. Next slide, please. Which then details the minor variance that is needed, being section 13.1B2 of the zoning bylaw, as the lot area will be reduced from 40 hectares to roughly 20 hectares for both the severed and retained lots. Next slide, please. Now, as per our standard procedure, we have to evaluate every minor variance under the 4 tests of the Planning Act and 2 tests of the official plan. The official plan is maintained as there's no impacts to the agricultural operations or natural features, and we also implement things such as the conservation easement to further protect the natural features. The zoning bylaw is maintained as there's no change in land use, does not result in fragmentation, and no new dwellings can be constructed. It's deemed minor as there's no impacts to the farming operation and natural heritage features as I detailed. And it's deemed appropriate and desirable as it allows the placement of a conservation easement, further protecting the natural landscape. There will be no noticeable change in the surrounding area, no increase to parking or traffic, and this is required to separate 2 existing uses, and there'd be no visible change at the street level. Next slide, please. Now, there is the need for an easement following this severance to maintain an irrigation reservoir, so that man-made pond that I had spoke about, to access the western portion, and the easement would be used to access the western portion of the retained lands, which are naturally divided by the Cunard River floodplain. This easement is proposed to be roughly 12.2 meters in width and 306 meters in length, and is actually that yellow dotted line on the screen that you see there. Now, next slide, please. So here we also have to consider the policies within the official plan as well. And we found that this further protects the natural heritage features. It places over the existing, the easement will be placed over an existing access and existing hydro poles. Relocation of this access and the hydro poles would be very costly and would be very damaging to both the agricultural operations and natural heritage features. Therefore, it's best not to remove them and place this easement instead. And there'd also still be no change from the street level as well. Next slide, please. So here you can see some images of where those easement lands are. The first image to the left is from the street level. And then as you travel in, you've got another image of it there. Next slide, please. And here you have it at the very back of the easement looking towards Ferris Road. So that's looking west. And you can see two of those agricultural outbuildings that are going to be located on the severed lands as they are best suited for the farm. Next slide, please. And then here, regarding comments that we've received only one comment from the Essex Region Conservation Authority detailing no objections. However, they have requested that a conservation easement be placed over the natural heritage features and the floodplain specifically due to the Canard River being located on this property. Other than that, we have received no comments from internal or external departments or the public. Next slide, please. And here we have the conditions of the consent. So with it are very standard conditions, followed by the need for that minor variance, restrictive layer being placed on our GIS system, so no new houses. And then we also have the need to exercise two easement agreements. One is that conservation easement. The second is that easement for access and to be placed over the hydro poles to power the irrigation pond. Now, as standard, all conditions need to be fulfilled within 2 years. Next slide, please. And then here, we also need both a motion, but also a conditions placed on the easements for the access to the land, to the retained land, and that standard conditions for an easement, and they have 2 years to fulfill it as well. Next slide, please. So here we have the decisions that the committee can make today. They can either approve the application with or without conditions, as long as they're deemed reasonable. The committee can defer based on the need for new information, or they can deny but must state their reasoning. And lastly, the planning department is recommending approval for all decisions to be made for this application or these applications. I do want to remind the committee that they need to make a motion for the consent application, the easement application, and the minor variance application as well. Thank you.
Rawlings. Is there anybody, yes, like to speak to the application? Thank you. And if you could turn on the button.
Hi, I'm Richard Wolf. I'm here on behalf of Hugh and Margaret Fackrell. Also here to support the application is Mr. David French, our planner. We'd like to thank Corinne for considerable work in helping us with the applications and answering our many questions regarding the applications and helping us get to this point. Thank you, Ian, for a very good job in presenting the recommendations of planning and presenting our application. Again, we support the recommendations of planning and are here to answer any questions that anyone might have.
You can turn that button off now. Great. All right, I'm going to now go to the committee to ask any questions with regards to the consent application. Hearing none. Then can I get a motion on that consent? Doreen? Could you speak into that? Sorry, thank you.
Motion to approve with an amendment to the conditions, adding that the easements be registered on title and proof of the same be provided to the municipality. Thank you.
I have a seconder. Mr. Phil Pocock, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Good. Now we're going to address the minor variance application, right? I have any questions with regards to the minor variance? Hearing none. Can I get a motion on that? Doreen? Thank you. Good. Seconder? Mr. Sobe? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. That's approved. Thank you. Okay. Our last, yes, 1 second. on the consent. We have to split that into two. There is an easement, so we need the agreement on the a motion to it on the easement. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to that. Do I have a motion on the easement then? Bill, okay, and the seconder? Doreen, okay, so all in favor of the easement? That passes. Sorry for that technicality, but had to go through. Thank you. Where it's cooler, or you can endure the heat. There is that. There is that. Okay. Now let's move on to our last application. Is application B 1424, Terry Francis Bale, 118 Levergood Drive, consent application. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rawlings again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our last application tonight is B 1424 for the property 118 Levergood Drive. It is located on the east side of Levergood Road, south of County Road 50. The subject property is designated Lakeshore Residential in the Town of Essex Official Plan and is zoned Residential District 1.1 in the Town of Essex zoning bylaw. Subject property currently contains one single detached dwelling and an accessory structure in the rear yard. The subject property is located within the floodplain development control area, is located within the Essex Region Conservation Authority's limit of regulated territory, and is identified through the Natural Heritage Features Overlay. The applicant is requesting to sever a 185.8 square meter easement over the front yard of the property in favor of the neighboring property 124 Levergood Drive to be used for a sanitary servicing purposes. On it, you can see it at the left-hand side of the image there in the dotted yellow lines. Next slide, please. So here we have the applicant's provided site plan to the left, detailing where our current municipal sanitary services end along Levergood. So it's just shy of 118 Levergood. However, in order to get sanitary servicing, it would need to access 118 Levergood over to 124. And then on the right-hand side, you can also see a bit of a shaded blue area. I apologize, it's hard to see from this from the screen so far away, but that just shows the area we've identified as natural heritage. Now with it, I do want to detail that 124 Levergood Drive, which abuts 118 Levergood Drive to the north, contains a single detached dwelling that is currently under construction, and as required per building code, a dwelling requires sanitary servicing. Now municipally provided sanitary servicing, as I said, terminates just shy of 118 Levergood. Therefore, that's why we are here today. Next slide, please. So here, this slide details that the applicants will be using a forced main. Please correct me if I use the wrong terminology, which will not disrupt the culvert that lays between the two properties, meaning there's no impacts to the drainage capabilities of either property. There's no requirements under the Draining Act as it goes under the drain. There's no disruption to the floodplain hazards and no disruption to any of the natural heritage features. And if you look at these images, it's the red line that goes under, on the top one, it's the red line that goes under the municipal drain. And then in the bottom image, you can see how that cuts through the property as well. It's the red line as well. So next slide, please. So here we just have an image of the subject lands. This is 118 Levergood. Next slide, please. Now with it, this is the area that they are going to be boring under the earth and using that forced main. You can see a significant amount of natural heritage there. However, it will not be disrupted with this method. Next slide, please. And here we can see how it approaches 124 Levergood as well. Next slide, please. So here we have the consideration of the policy. So under the PPS and the county of official plan, they're both satisfied as they promote development on full municipal services within a secondary settlement area. The official plan is satisfied as there's no change in land use. There's no visible use at the street level. The development will utilize municipal sanitary services without obstructing the right of way. And there's going to be no impact to, like I mentioned, drainage capabilities, the floodplain hazards, or any natural heritage. Next slide, please. So here, we've only received one comment from the Essex Region Conservation Authority, which detailed no objections at this time. Otherwise, we did not receive any comments from our internal or external departments or the public. Next slide, please. Here, we have a conditions for a standard easement application, which is submission of the registered reference plan, signed transfers, and all conditions must be satisfied within 2 years. Next slide, please. Now with it, the planning department is recommending approval subject to the detailed conditions. And the committee has the choice to either approve with or without conditions, defer, or deny while stating their reasoning. Thank you.
I'm going to go to the applicants or the representative if they'd like to speak. Go ahead, right ahead to the podium, and if you could turn, I'm going to circle around here. And turn on the button when you're there, okay? You might have to go all the way around the back, or you got it? Okay, perfect. Yeah, okay.
I'm Jeffrey Baker. I'm solicitor on behalf of the applicants and the recipients, proposed recipients of the easement, the Hannigans, who are building their new home at 124 Levergood. Now, that home could be serviced by a raised bed septic system rather than being connected to the municipal sanitary service. However, I think it's objectively preferable that homes be on the municipal sanitary service and not on the old style raised bed systems. Fortunately, the Hannigans have a neighbor who's willing to cooperate with them in granting the requested easement. And we're available to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, if you can just hit the button off, and I'm going to ask, is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak for or against this application? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go to the committee, and I'm going to ask if there are any questions with regards to the application. Mr. Sauvé.
Question is regarding the sanitary sewer, where it's going to be connecting into, where is it going into a manhole that's in the front of the yard that allowing the force main to tie into? And my other question would be is, what are the other homes? Are they on septic systems, I believe, at 50, where it comes at the corner of the road? And in the future, is there a possibility that they're going to be running sanitary sewer extension down that roadway, and the costs and fees associated with putting in a force main is going to be expensive, and especially with the directional drilling? So has there been a consideration with the extension of the sanitary line with the other dwelling units that are at 50 to also take into consideration of a tie-in? Because you always would rather have a gravity fed sewer than a force main, especially for a single dwelling home. That's my question and my concern. So I'm just wondering what the applicant would have to say to that, or even with any future potential of an extension of the sanitary down Levergood Beach, because my understanding is there's also a possible development that might be taking place in the future on the west side of Levergood.
I'm going to ask, the question is, was it directed to the applicant, or is it more directed to administration? Okay, let me go to administration first to get some clarity if I can. Corinne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So great questions. The newer lots that are along County Road 50, they all have sanitary or septic systems, private septic systems. So there is no sewer line that runs down there, obviously, and that's where the applicant wishes to extend the sanitary from the Levergood Beach area. So yeah, it's going north to the property, and then it does end. Speaking to future development in the area, obviously there is potential in the future, but that is actually outside of the scope of the application that's at hand. And from my understanding, nothing's happening anytime soon. So this does help the applicants tie in. There has been no extension to any of the neighboring properties to also tie in. That is something that maybe the applicants can speak to if they've had any other conversations with any of the neighboring neighbors. But at this point in time, future development outside of the scope of this application and acknowledgement of the costs, yes, but I'm sure the applicant is very aware of the costs with regards to this. So, Mr. Chair, I can turn it over to the applicants if they wish to add anything additional to that.
I think Dan Hannigan can speak better to that than,
Hi, Dan. Thank you very much for hearing our application today. So yeah, we did our homework. We looked at the fact that we looked at the tertiary septic system, which for our home, because we are also adding an ADU for my parents to move in, it was going to be a very large septic system taking up a lot of space. We have the Bondi drain right next to us. We felt that having such a large septic bed so close to the Bondi drain, we looked at other alternatives to be a lot cleaner. And we looked at the directional boring, and it was a far less expensive, first and foremost, but also with the directional drilling, it's not going to impact anything with the IRCA properties. And that to us was important because we knew when we bought the property, it was IRCA, and we wanted to do everything we could to protect that landscape. That's what was important to us. And so we looked at that and we went through, we've been going through this for quite a while with the town, with IRCA, looking at everything. And we feel that we have fulfilled all of the obligations of both with looking at this system. We will be tying into, the end of the septic, there's a manhole at the very end of, the sanitary system is actually coming up from the beach. It's not coming down from 50. When we spoke to the gentleman that we bought the property from, he had actually severed several lots. There is one more lot that would be south of us that they are planning to build next year. And north of us. I'm sorry. Yeah, north. I get my directions. North of us. And that is actually the gentleman that we bought the property from. That's his sister that's building there. And we've discussed that with them. The other three houses that are on County Road 50 already have their septic systems. They're already done. One of them is a new build, less than a couple of years old. So, but the new build, we've told them about that. And it's a 2-inch pipe that's actually being drawn under the ground. It's at a minimum depth of 8 feet. We're actually over 5 feet below the IRCA drain, which they asked us for 4. We've gone 5. And again, it's a directional bore. It's a very clean system. And we have obviously all the locates to make sure that we're not going to be impeding with anything gas, electrical, water that is existing. So we do have municipal water in front of our house, but no municipal sewer. So we just wanted to be able to connect to the municipal sewer just to make it cleaner. So I hope that answers your question. Go ahead.
Hang on. Through the chair. So I was going to ask, Dan, does that answer your question? And you have any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very familiar with tertiary treatment plants and the infrastructure with sanitary sewer. As you just stated that you're going to have another person that's going to be wanting to build next door to the north of you then, right? So that person is going to also need to either decide to do a septic system, which obviously, you're in the neighborhood around 50 grand, to doing a direct connection to the sanitary system, which is obviously always the desired case. My concern will be is now that person is also going to need the same thing as an easement to do another punch. That's why I was suggesting maybe looking at a gravity fed connection, because the next person is going to build beside you is going to want to do the same thing, is going to want to have a sanitary sewer hookup, and they're going to have to either decide to put a system in or get an easement through your yard and the yard that we're asking to right now to punch the line through. That's all my saying is the consideration of a gravity fed versus force main.
So I'm going to go to Corinne because she has a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the only thing that I would add, and again, all great questions from Member Sauvé. One of the things, though, I think that we should highlight on this is this discussion about IRCA being involved and everything like that. There's a reason. There is a bit of a floodplain that runs through the property. There's a finite amount of area on this property that you can develop on. And when you put the house on, when you put the ADU on, there's not a lot of room, even for the tertiary system per se, to put on that property. So having that force main sewer line connection does allow them that connection without encroaching into the floodplain, which is not, you're not allowed to fill in the floodplain. You're not allowed to put any kind of fill or any kind of material or whatever have you. So I think at this point, Mr. Hannigan is dealing with a finite developable area, and the force main is the solution to it. Now, on the note of the northern property is not in the floodplain. It's outside of it. So if they would have more of an opportunity to either do the tertiary system or, as Mr. Member Sauvé had mentioned, there is this force main that at that point in time, maybe they could look into extending further, or I would think a tertiary system for them would probably be more economical in their case. So just my addition there, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it.
I don't know if you need a response to that. I think it was pretty well clarified. Is there any one last comment you'd like to make?
To the lot that's next to us, the proposed structure that's going on is a very small home and requires a very small septic system. I've spoken to Mr. Curtis, who's the gentleman that I bought the property from. It's his sister that's actually building on that property. And because of the small home and the small lot, they're okay with, according to what he was telling me, they're okay with going with the septic system there because it's a very small system. Ours would have been a very large system taking up a lot of space. And we had, by the design, it was over 700 feet of linear pipe under the ground in the IRCA floodplain. And it just took up so much space of the lot that it wasn't feasible. So we looked at other alternatives. And the gentleman that we were working with, Ted from Rapid Drainage, who, when we started looking at the different types of systems, we were given a list of the recommended contractors, and his company was number one on that list. So we contacted him, and he's very well aware of the area, and he was the one that actually recommended that the force main would be the cleanest connection to the municipal system. So that's why we started to go down that road. Thank you.
And I hope that answers most of your questions. Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to go to the committee to ask if there are any further questions. And can I get a motion? Good.
To pass with conditions as noted.
Thank you. And seconder, Mr. Pocock, thank you. All in favor? And that does pass. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn, given that was the last application. Doreen, you're on fire tonight, man. Thank you very much, and we are adjourned. Thank you.